Some people out there don't really enjoy, horror movies, being stressed out, being on the edge of their seat, whatnot. They don't enjoy stress in real life. They want bliss. They want contentment. And the ticket for them might be the Church of the Latter-day Dude. The religion is called Dudeism, and the website is Dudeism.com. Ordination by the religion of the Big Lebowski, the classic Coen brothers film. Joining me on the radio this evening is the Reverend Gary, a representative of that very organization, the Church of the Latter-day Dude. Gary, thanks so much for being a part of the broadcast. Great to have you.
It's good to be here, Seth.
You know, it's funny. I've been a Coen brothers fan for a long time, but I hadn't actually seen The Big Lebowski until just a few years ago. And first, I was amazed how quotable the entire film was. Like, there's about 400 lines in there that I thought, this is a T-shirt. And then I go to the Dudeism.com website, and I realize you guys apparently thought the same thing.
Yes.
There's just so much awesome stuff there.
And those quotes, you can dig a little deeper into them, and they have a lot more meaning sometimes.
What do you mean? I mean, are they drawing from some ancient philosophy, or is it references to other films or books, or what?
Well, yeah, drawing on the ancient philosophy sort of thing is where we focus our attention.
So, Dudeism is what? Is it a thing? Is it a tongue-in-cheek thing? Is it a genuine philosophy for life and for living? What is it?
Yes, it's kind of a retelling of a genuine philosophy for life. It's kind of bringing Taoism and some other early Eastern philosophies into a modern age so that modern people can discuss them and follow these philosophies, and it feels familiar.
So you go to the website, though, and you see the dude, and he's got the bowling ball, and I'm trying to think, is that a lunch sack, or is it a bag of weed? I'm not sure what he's got.
He carries two. He's got the bowling ball bag, and he has the cell phone bag.
The bag phone. That's another thing that struck me. And by the way, for those who haven't seen the film, there may be a few spoilers in here, but there won't be enough so that you wouldn't enjoy the film. And I found that people either get Lebowski or they don't.
A lot of people don't get it the first time at all.
Yeah.
A lot of Dudeists, it's their second or third viewing that they really pick up on it.
So if we had to introduce the dude to audience members who had no idea what we were talking about, can you flesh it out?
Well, the dude is kind of an old hippie that has found himself in our modern times. It's kind of the way we look at it. Imagine someone from Woodstock still kicking around trying to figure it out these days.
I know some people like that.
Yeah. So you have that, and it's a take it easy vibe. I mean, a lot of people found inspiration who were already into like Zen Buddhism and such. And I had the opportunity to talk to Jeff Bridges' Zen master, or Zen master friend, Bernie Glassman. And he was involved in the 60s. He was doing his thing back then. So he remembers when the 60s started, the hippie movement started, and it was really Zen and spiritual that way, philosophical. And then the drugs got too much for too many people. So there's a slice of Americana history in there that we're focused on, and it's the moment before the hippie movement went crazy, in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the funeral of the hippie in Haight-Ashbury. In the 70s, they buried the hippie movement. I think it was 69 or 70.
The funeral of the hippie?
Yeah, the hippie movement officially ended by the original hippies in late 60s, early 70s. I'm not really sure right now. I'd have to
It never really ended for a few people.
No, but it transformed. It went from... it became more about the drug culture and the counterculture than trying to express something, a better point of view for the world.
We talking about peace, love, harmony, that kind of thing, or what?
Right. The original entheogens, the pod and the LSD, that carried it, but then heroin and just outlaws came into the picture in the early 70s. So, like the incident at the Rolling Stones concert with the Hells Angels, that was a moment that marked the end of the hippie movement.
that impacted the movement as a whole, that one incident?
Yeah, you had guys like Allen Ginsberg move on from that point. And all the real hippie movement people started to move on. You had that in the Democratic Convention.
So I want to go back. The actor Jeff Bridges has a Zen master?
Yeah, you can, Bernie Glassman. He runs the Zen Peacemakers. I've sat with them several times, hung out with them.
Well, get me through the. We talk a little bit about Zen, but it's normally we talk about it in the sense that you're mellow, you're on an even keel kind of thing. We don't really get into the spiritual aspect of Zen because as an atheist, we don't necessarily subscribe to the spiritual. But help me understand Zen from your point of view. Is it a spiritual state in some way? What is it?
It's a state of being. It's a state of mindfulness. It's secular. It's atheistic. There is no God in Zen Buddhism.
There's no spiritual. There's no otherworldly plane involved.
It speaks in language like that because humans have that in our brains. We're wired to look for sacred and deeper meanings. So it speaks in a language such as that, but that's not what's meant. The words are just words. The classic Buddha quote about, I can point to the moon, but all you're looking at is my finger. You have to see the moon yourself. All the words are just fingers pointing. The moon is over there. The closest thing to a spiritual understanding I find in Zen is a wholeness understanding, which is really the same as what Neil deGrasse Tyson will tell you, how we're connected to the universe atomically, connected to the earth chemically, and connected to each other biologically. So that's the wholeness that Zen is talking about. And Dudeism takes no stance either way on the existence of God, any God or gods. It's just like the classic Buddhism. It just doesn't seem like a question that we need to be dealing with. We have enough problems here now.
Talking here with Reverend Gary of the Church of the Latter-day Dude. Are you a Dudeist priest?
Yes.
And what do Dudeist priests do? I wrote about you a little bit in my upcoming book. I have a chapter called The Order, the Doctrine, and the Dude, because I was fascinated by Dudeism. And I had myself ordained. Okay. I went to the website. I got my Dudeist ordination certificate, and I am now licensed to marry and bury. Is that right? Am I an ordained minister?
It depends on the county and state you're in and country. We deal with this issue when we're becoming more and more involved in dealing with the issue of seeing that our Dudists can perform weddings. We see it as one of the good works we can provide to society.
Have you ever performed a wedding yourself?
Myself, no. I've done a lot of research and talked to people so that I can be informed about the topic.
I just have this visual. I have this visual of somebody walking in like Jeff Bridges. He's got his pajama bottoms on and his robe, and he's...
Oh, there's been hundreds of weddings performed that way.
Are there photographs? Can we find... is there documentation?
We're trying to assemble a database of that ourselves and trying to contact the individual dudes out there who have done it. But there are Dudists out there who have done 2, 3, 4 weddings as Dudeism weddings.
How many Dudeist priests are there right now? I mean, estimate for me.
Worldwide?
Yeah.
Well, we have about 250,000 ordained in our database, and our Facebook page has over 380,000 likes. So you have ordained Dudists, and I'm sure there's Dudists who are not. I mean, I could tell you there's at least 250,000 of them around the world, probably twice that number, who observe Dudeism in some fashion. So, yeah, we're a worldwide growing organization.
I'm looking at the website. I see you've got a Dudeism store, a Dudeist library. What's in the library? Just stuff about Zen Buddhism and that kind of thing?
Well, we have published our own books. We have the Abide Guide. The Dude De Ching is currently out of print, but will be coming back. Lebowski 101, which is a series of essays dealing with Lebowski and Dudeism. And most recently, The Tao of the Dude. And that's by Oliver Benjamin, the founder of Dudeism.
The Tao of the Dude.
Yes, just came out, just released.
We're speaking to Taoism, equilibrium in the universe, the yin and the yang kind of thing, or what?
Well, Taoism would be the uncorrupted first draft before the magic and the wizardry got added to it later on. Just Lao Tzu's original 87-verse text. It could be considered a founding document for Dudeism. Our contention is that there has always been Dudeism. The Taoism explains it from that time period in that place in China roughly 2,500 years ago. That was an explanation of what Dudeism was at that time. And we are working to define Dudeism as it is now.
I'm looking in the Dudeist library. You've got a section or a piece of writing called Deuteronomy, D-U-D-E, Deuteronomy. And it says at the top, the section in the Judeo-Christian Bible called Deuteronomy deals with laws you need to follow to live your life. God, I hope not. They are hopelessly outdated. Thank you for saying that, Gary.
Yeah. We don't. There's no revelation or sacred text so much.
And then you say, here's the Dudo-Cohen version of them, and you actually have like a book of Deuteronomy on the website.
Yeah, that's not in my personal favorites list, but that's, there's a lot of dudes exploring different ways to, explore Dudeism.
So, if I'm a casual spectator, which I am, and I enjoy the Lebowski film, and I enjoy sort of the subculture of Dudeism. I mean, I enjoy watching, and now I've got my diploma or my little ordination certificate just for the hell of it. But I look at this and I think, well, how much of this is legitimate? How much of this is, hey, this is a genuine philosophy for living. This is kind of something we want to do, and we've sprinkled it with humor. Or is this just full-on satire? We're just tweaking those who might be hypersensitive about religious issues, or we're just doing it all tongue-in-cheek. I mean, how much of this is played straight, and how much of it is satire?
Well, we are not a mock religion, and not here to mock any religions. We're not like the Flying Spaghetti Monster. We're not here to mock Christians. We're not like the Church of the Subgenius. We're not here to just mock the whole idea of religion in itself. It's hard to describe us as a religion, seeing how we have no revelation, no prophets, no gods to speak of. I describe, my shorthand for Dudeism is humanism in a bathrobe.
Humanism in a bathrobe. That's a T-shirt. That's another T-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, it lends itself to it. I mean, there's something there that people want, that people are looking for, and they're just looking for a way to define it. And what religions do that is beneficial and has utility is the building of community. So we're building a community, and we're providing a place to discuss a real world philosophy. I mean, it's very Tao-centered, very, very humanistic, and I argue that it's quite a bit Buddhist. The Buddhist thing, the Buddhist set, you get Zen, Mahayana, Theravada, you get. Not all Buddhists are, I would describe as theistic. Sure, you have the Dalai Lama, which I equate to Fred Phelps of the Westboro Baptist Church. He's the crazy Buddhist out there, and that's the craziest they get. So, I mean, you could just kind of see how it all breaks down from there.
Two names I would not have associated outside of the context of this conversation, but I think I see what you're saying. You're saying he's extreme.
Two extremists.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama is a Buddhist extremist, and he promotes science and rational thought. So,
two other words I wouldn't have thought I would have heard: Dudeist and extremist. I always thought Buddhist were like moderation in all things.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, there's your example of an extreme Buddhist is the Dalai Lama. So what we're defining as extreme is a matter of perspective.
So are hallucinogenic drugs like encouraged or necessary to be able to get to this sort of state? I mean, I'm honestly not asking the question as a jab. I just think,
no, I understand.
Is the entire culture if it's a religion, is it a religion that's surrounded in a haze of quote unquote substances?
I mean, that's for each person to decide for themselves. Personally, I do favor entheogens, cannabis, psilocybin, MDMA and LSD. I favor those. I mean, there's a lot of science to back up why I favor them, as far as like they help you see God. I mean, that's the definition of an entheogen. God doesn't have to be a real entity. It can be a concept. And science shows us that these drugs activate a region of our brain that is associated with that function. So it does give insight from my personal experience and my personal point of view. And I'm not going to tell anyone they should. That's for each individual. You got to know where you are with your own mind. But yeah, I wouldn't say we're just a drug-induced dream of wanting to play around with robes and pretend we're priests. There's a real understanding, and there's a real drive to find what we can offer the world ourselves. I mean, nobody thinks the whole world should be full of Dudeists. I mean, at a certain point, we might not get anything done. But there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said for the damage that overachievers cause in our world. Not all advancement has utility to the human being itself. I mean,
you're saying just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done? Is that the point?
Exactly. I mean, Hitler was a great achiever. How much utility did the human race find through his achievement, his not taking it easy, his overachieving? Overachievement and getting a lot done doesn't always mean getting the right thing done.
I want to come back for just a second. I'm struck by, as an observer, that when we talk about LSD and other substances helping one see God, however you would define God, take you to a place of enlightenment or freeing the mind, is that an accurate way to say it?
It gives insight into your own mind. A lot of people describe it as breaking down the boundaries between what we consider real and really is just a hyper reality, a concept in our own mind.
Well, my point is that, the root word of the word hallucinogen is hallucinate. I mean, we're talking about tricking the brain, are we not? Are we not chemically taking ourselves to a place of hallucination? We may be seeing something, but is it a reality? That's my question.
Well, there's a lot of question about what reality actually is. So, I mean, what is our reality? You can ask 6 different physicists and they'll give you 6 different answers. I mean, if this is a virtual reality experiment conducted by a far more advanced species, how different is your hallucination than reality? The brain and vat problem. So you have that to contend with. So that's less a function of what I would look to those drugs for. I more focus on the entheogen aspect in just breaking down and being able to look at things anew and see it from a different point of view. I mean, the guy who invented LSD continued to take it into his late 80s. And he described it as inspiring and helped him understand his own reality. I mean, that's all we have to work with is our own reality, our own perceptions. I think, therefore I am. The rest of you, I'm not so sure exist. So
I'm pinching myself right now. I'm trying to.
That's an existential problem, not in question. I mean, there's that. That's one aspect. But then you have to think, well, how much asking all these questions is useful? There's, I quote a lot of Buddhism here, but it goes back to the poisoned arrow. Okay, so we have this condition. We're alive. We experience things. Does it matter how that happened, or does our experience of these things matter? Does it matter how we came to experience them, or is our experience what actually matters? I mean, all we have that's real is our experience. And you can't trust your lying eyes, otherwise there wouldn't be all those brain games out there and the 3D posters and such. So our experience of reality isn't actual reality. It's a perception created in our brain based off of input through different sensors we have on our bodies.
I think you and I probably line up on perception versus reality, the subjective human brain, and the question of can you know reality beyond your own mind? All those questions they're relevant philosophical questions, certainly.
Yes, but where do we apply them in real life? I mean, sometimes I think we shouldn't spend so much time thinking about that, or you shouldn't unless you have some sort of academia to put it in context.
To many of us, it is something we want to pursue, to be able to determine what reality is, to test and retest, to try to know. I mean, can we know anything beyond our own minds? To ask these philosophical questions. And do you think we should check out because we aren't PhDs? I mean, is that the point, or what?
No, I just think we got to be careful with that and not cling to our first discoveries. I think that's where a lot of the problems come from religion, is that people come up with an idea and then cling too tightly to it and try and force it to be the answer.
I'm doing a speech around the country right now called I love the idea that talks about that very thing. You build a wall of protection around it. It makes you happy. It is sort of a cherished. It almost becomes a part of your family, a part of your identity.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, and then you, after a while, you find yourself not really listening to any challenges to it. I was guilty of that as a devout religious person for a long time. I built this wall of protection around the stories of specific deities without really asking the questions. But I think those questions are what helped me to have a better life today. Challenging that reality, quote unquote, allowed me to sort of step out of a superstitious mindset and try to have what I call a personal relationship with reality, which I think is something worth pursuing, you know?
I think asking the questions is the important part. Getting the answers is the dangerous part.
If you go to Dudeism.com, you have a Dudes paper. Do you guys still publish the Dudes paper?
Oh, yes. We're trying to make that more active as we speak. We're going to be publishing one article a week as it stands now, and always looking to have more contributions if there's any dudes out there who want to write for us. Yes, we definitely are going to be pushing the Dudes paper a bit more even.
Well, if we could encapsulate your, for lack of a better word, philosophy, worldview is what we always used to say in religious cultures. What is your worldview? You know, but what do you think? If you had to sum up Dudeism and sort of your approach to living life in a nutshell, how would you do it?
Courageous empathy based in rational thought. I think that's the basics.
And it's another teacher.
Just take it easy.
I mean, when you say take it easy, and obviously Jeff Lebowski, the dude, he was an unemployed drug-using guy who only wanted to sort of sleep, eat, screw, and bowl. I say in the book that Dudeists want to capitalize on the simple things, right? In a world where people think a major bank account and a Lamborghini means success.
We're not materialist.
Yeah, the dude is more like, you know, hey, I want to sleep in.
Well, he also wanted to sit in and occupy some administration buildings, save a girl from kidnappers. So he was actually quite active when you really think about it.
So those who say, look, this dude was just a drug-using, unemployed, lazy man, you see him as more of a guy who engaged, but engaged outside the system kind of thing.
He was true to himself. That's who he was. That may not mean the character itself is an archetype Dudeist in having to bowl or take drugs or not have a job. It's not what you do. It's how you do it that defines you as Dudeist or not.
Gary, are you a bowler?
I'm an online gamer. My games are anything but Dudeist.
What do you play?
Well, I like to play Planet Side 2. It's a first-person shooter, an open warfare game. Sounds much more akin to something Walter would play, but that's how I find my relaxation, is getting out there and killing a couple hundred friends. So
it takes you to a place of peace and zen. You know,
recreation is important to a human creature.
Do you have a favorite scene in the film? I'm just curious. You know, the Big Lebowski.
He drives the car into the dumpster.
When he drives his car into the dumpster, when he drops the joint between his legs.
Oh, yeah. Literally happened to me. Literally. Exactly. When we watched the movie the first time, the wife thought they were following me around town.
You dropped a joint and crashed your car?
Yeah. Well, into a dumpster. And I was just parking slowly, spilt my beer. And yeah, this was back in the 80s, though. I mean, back when people used to sincerely say, oh, I drive better after a few drinks. You don't hear that anymore, but back in the 80s, it was still floating around.
Thankfully, you don't hear that
Yeah, it's
anymore.
true. I mean, we've all made a lot of mistakes, but that was a little too
I will say that with the spilt beer, there was a casualty in the accident. So
oh, yeah, certainly.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
That was alcohol abuse that day.
Reverend Gary from Dudeism.com, the Church of the Latter-day Dude. If you're curious, go check out the website. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us on the radio. Very enlightening, very entertaining stuff. And all my best to you and yours out there at Dudeism.com. Okay, Gary?
All right, man. Take it easy.